The grand ballroom of the Hawthorne Imperial Hotel glittered beneath crystal chandeliers worth more than most people's homes. Waiters moved gracefully between marble pillars, carrying champagne towers, while a string quartet played softly near the stage. Nearly 240 guests filled the room. Business executives, politicians, distant relatives, and social elites who had spent years competing for invitations into the powerful Carter family circle, and in the center of it all stood Elena Carter, trying not to fall apart. She adjusted the sleeve of her silver dress for the 10th time that evening, while staring at her reflection in one of the mirrored walls. From a distance, she looked calm, elegant, and composed. Inside, she was barely breathing. "You should smile more," her younger sister Vanessa whispered as she approached with a glass of champagne. "People are starting to think you hate your own engagement party." Elena forced a weak smile. "I'm fine." Vanessa tilted her head sympathetically, though the amusement in her eyes betrayed her. "Relax. Tonight is important for the family. Try not to make everything awkward. Everything for the family." That sentence had controlled Elena's entire life. Since childhood, she had been taught that she was the Carter family's disappointment. At age 12, doctors informed her she suffered from a rare medical condition that would likely prevent her from ever having children naturally. Her parents never looked at her the same afterward. Her father stopped introducing her proudly. Her mother stopped hugging her. And Vanessa became the perfect daughter, destined to continue the Carter bloodline and inherit the family empire. Elena spent years believing she deserved the coldness. She studied harder, spoke softer, smiled wider, hoping someday her parents would finally love her the way they loved Vanessa. But love in the Carter family was always conditional. Elena, her fiancé Daniel, appeared beside her, immediately noticing the tension in her face. "Are you okay?" She nodded automatically, just overwhelmed. Daniel gently touched her hand. Unlike her family, his kindness always felt genuine. "You don't have to survive tonight alone." Before Elena could answer, the lights dimmed slightly near the stage. Her father stood at the microphone. Richard Carter looked powerful even at 63. His expensive tuxedo, silver hair, and commanding posture silenced the ballroom within seconds. Guests turned toward him with admiration. "Elena," Vanessa whispered with a smirk. "Dad's about to give the family toast." A knot formed in Elena's stomach. Her father raised his champagne glass. "Thank you all for attending this important evening for our family." Polite applause filled the room. Richard smiled proudly toward Vanessa first. "My youngest daughter has always represented everything the Carter name stands for: strength, grace, excellence." Elena felt invisible already. Then his eyes shifted toward her. And then, he continued slowly, "There is Elena." A strange silence spread across the ballroom. Elena's chest tightened. She has struggled her entire life with limitations. Daniel frowned immediately. Richard sighed dramatically into the microphone. "As a father, accepting disappointment is never easy, especially when one child is born capable of carrying a legacy while another." He paused. "It simply isn't." Whispers spread through the guests. Elena's face burned with humiliation. "Dad," she whispered under her breath. But he kept going. "Families like ours survive through strength, through perfection, through continuation." He looked directly at Elena. "Unfortunately, not every child is built for that responsibility." Her mother stood beside the stage, sipping champagne silently. Not defending her, not stopping him, Richard gave a cold smile. "Some things arrive defective no matter how much money or love you pour into them." The room froze. Several guests looked horrified. Others avoided eye contact entirely. Elena felt the air leave her lungs. Defective. He had called her defective in front of 240 people. Her vision blurred as years of buried pain crashed into her chest at once. Childhood hospital visits, whispered conversations behind closed doors. Her mother crying over Vanessa proudly, while barely acknowledging Elena existed. Daniel stepped forward angrily. That's enough. But Elena could barely hear him. She grabbed the edge of a nearby table to steady herself as tears threatened to spill. The humiliation was too heavy, too public, too cruel. Vanessa walked closer, pretending concern. Elena, don't make a scene. That sentence shattered something inside her. Elena turned toward the ballroom exit, desperate to escape before she completely broke down. Then suddenly, the massive ballroom doors opened. Every head turned. A sharply dressed older man entered carrying a black leather briefcase alongside two uniformed legal officers. His expression was calm but firm. He walked directly toward the stage. Richard Carter's face instantly lost color. The man opened the briefcase slowly before speaking into the silence. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced clearly, "I apologize for the interruption, but I require exactly 60 seconds of your attention regarding Miss Elena Carter." The ballroom became deathly quiet. Then the man pulled out a sealed document, and Richard Carter began to panic. The ballroom remained frozen in stunned silence as the attorney unfolded the sealed documents in his hands. Even the musicians near the stage had stopped playing completely. Richard Carter stormed forward first. "You have no authority to interrupt a private family event," he snapped. "Leave now before security removes you." But the attorney didn't move. Instead, he adjusted his glasses calmly and looked directly at Elena. "My name is Arthur Hale," he said firmly. "I represent a legal investigation involving Miss Elena Carter and the Carter family." A nervous murmur spread through the guests. Phones slowly began rising into the air as people started recording. Elena stood motionless beside Daniel, her heart pounding violently against her ribs. She could barely process what was happening. Her father's humiliation still echoed inside her mind. Defective Arthur Hale opened the first document carefully. 28 years ago. He announced a newborn infant was illegally removed from St. Mary's Hospital following a private arrangement involving Richard and Celeste Carter. Elena's mother suddenly stepped forward. "Stop this immediately." But her voice lacked confidence. Arthur continued anyway. The Carters' biological daughter died shortly after birth due to medical complications unknown to the public at the time. Gasps exploded across the ballroom. Vanessa's champagne glass slipped from her fingers and shattered across the marble floor. "No," she whispered. Richard's expression darkened with fury. "This is slander." Arthur raised another document. "These are certified hospital records, verified by the court this morning." Daniel squeezed Elena's trembling hand tighter. Elena could barely breathe. Arthur's voice cut through the silence again. After losing their biological child, Richard and Celeste Carter arranged the illegal substitution of another infant born that same night. Slowly, his eyes turned toward Elena. That child was Elena. The room erupted into chaos. People whispered loudly. Some guests stared openly at the Carter family, while others stepped farther away from them, as if scandal itself were contagious. Elena felt dizzy. "What?" she whispered. Her mother's face had gone completely pale now. "Elena, sweetheart, listen to me. No." Elena breathed shakily, backing away. "No, this isn't real." But deep down, something inside her already knew. All those years, all the coldness, all the distance. Arthur opened another file from the briefcase. The investigation uncovered additional evidence involving falsified medical diagnoses throughout Miss Carter's childhood. Daniel's eyes narrowed instantly. "What does that mean?" he demanded. Arthur looked directly at Elena with visible sympathy. "It means your medical condition was heavily manipulated and intentionally exaggerated." The ballroom fell silent again. Elena stared blankly. Arthur continued carefully. Several former physicians admitted they were pressured financially to present Miss Carter as medically fragile and infertile from a young age. Vanessa looked horrified. Mom, Celeste Carter suddenly burst into tears. We did what we had to do. Richard grabbed her arm sharply. Be quiet, but it was already too late. Arthur spoke again. The investigation concluded the false diagnoses were designed to prevent Elena from threatening Vanessa Carter's future position as sole heir to the Carter family estate. The words slammed into Elena like a physical blow. Every hospital visit, every medication, every tear she cried alone, believing she was broken. It had all been manufactured. Her father's cruel toast suddenly became even more monstrous. He called her defective over lies they created themselves. Daniel looked ready to explode with rage. You destroyed her entire life. Richard straightened his tuxedo coldly. Everything we did was necessary for this family. Elena slowly turned toward him, her eyes filled with disbelief. Necessary, she whispered. For the first time in years, Richard showed no fake warmth at all. You were never supposed to matter, he said quietly. The sentence shattered the last fragile piece of Elena's heart. Several guests audibly gasped. Vanessa stepped backward as tears rolled down her face. You lied to me, Tooth. You were the future. Richard replied harshly. Everything belonged to you. Arthur closed the folder slowly. There is one final matter. The room became still once more. Elena Carter's biological mother filed multiple missing child petitions over the last 28 years, he announced. Those cases were repeatedly buried through financial influence connected to the Carter family. Elena's chest tightened painfully. Arthur looked toward the back of the ballroom. She is present tonight. The crowd immediately parted near the rear entrance. A woman stood there trembling uncontrollably. She looked no older than her early 50s, dressed elegantly but simply. Tears streamed down her face as she stared directly at Elena with overwhelming emotion. In her shaking hands was a tiny knitted pink baby blanket. Elena's, the woman whispered brokenly. The entire ballroom disappeared around her. For 28 years, Elena had lived believing she was unwanted. But the look in that woman's eyes carried something Elena had never truly seen before. Love. Real love. And suddenly, for the first time all night, Richard Carter looked afraid. The moment Elena heard her name spoken by the woman at the back of the ballroom, something inside her cracked open in a way that wasn't pain anymore. It was recognition. The room no longer felt real. Guests faded into background noise. The chandeliers blurred into soft light. Even the chaos of whispers and shocked gasps became distant, like she was underwater. All Elena could see was the woman holding the tiny pink blanket. Arthur Hale stepped aside gently. Miss Marian Cole, he said quietly, biological mother of Elena Carter. The woman took a shaky step forward, then another. Her hands trembled so badly she nearly dropped the blanket. Tears kept falling, but she didn't wipe them away. She refused to break eye contact with Elena, as if afraid Elena might disappear if she blinked. I never stopped looking for you, she whispered. Elena's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her body moved before her mind could decide one slow step forward. Then another. Vanessa tried to speak from behind her, voice breaking. Elena, wait. Please. But Elena didn't stop. Richard Carter suddenly shouted, Security, remove her from this building. But nobody moved, not a single guard. Because everyone was watching the truth unfold too closely to interrupt it. Marian finally reached the center of the ballroom. Her voice cracked as she lifted the blanket slightly. I knitted this for you the day I lost you, she said. I never got to hold you again. Elena stared at it. Her hands began to shake, something deep inside her. Something buried under years of being called weak, defective, incomplete, started to rise. "You're lying," Elena whispered, though her voice didn't sound convinced. Marian shook her head quickly. No, sweetheart, I would never lie to you. I fought for you every single day." Arthur stepped forward again, his voice steady. "For the record, Miss Cole's identity and maternity claims have been verified through DNA confirmation conducted last week under court supervision." The final piece of denial inside Elena shattered. Her knees nearly gave out. Daniel rushed closer to support her, but she gently pulled her hand away. She needed to stand on her own for this moment. Richard's voice cut through again, desperate now. "This is a setup. You think you can destroy my family in one night?" Arthur turned slowly toward him. "No, Mr. Carter," he replied. "You destroyed your own family over decades. Tonight is simply the first time you're being seen clearly." That sentence hit harder than any accusation. Then Marian turned her tear-filled eyes toward Richard. "You stole her from me," she said softly, "and you made her believe she was broken so she would never question you." Vanessa covered her mouth, shaking uncontrollably. "Mom, Dad, tell me this isn't true." But neither of them answered, because there was nothing left to defend. Arthur opened his final file. "There is also the matter of financial fraud," he said. "Miss Elena Carter's identity was used in multiple falsified legal and tax documents to conceal hidden assets and offshore accounts controlled by the Carter family." The ballroom erupted again, but this time it wasn't shock. It was disgust. Guests began stepping away from Richard and Celeste like they were toxic. Phones zoomed in closer. Business partners whispered urgently to assistants already making calls. Elena slowly turned her head toward her father. For the first time in her life, she saw him clearly, not as powerful, not as untouchable, but as a man losing control. "This is what you meant," Elena said quietly. Richard frowned. "What? When you called me defective," she continued, her voice trembling but growing stronger. "You didn't mean I was broken." She stepped forward. "You meant I was disposable." Silence swallowed the room. Richard didn't respond. Because she was right. Marian reached for Elena's hand slowly, giving her the choice. Elena hesitated only a second before letting their fingers touch. The moment they did, something inside Elena softened like a wound, finally being acknowledged after years of infection. But then Arthur spoke again. "There is one final update." Everyone froze. He looked directly at Elena. "Under the legal restructuring initiated by this investigation, any assets and shares registered under Elena Carter's identity have been frozen pending redistribution." Richard's face went pale again, because he understood what that meant. Elena was no longer just the victim. She was now legally tied to the collapse of everything he built. Daniel whispered beside her, "Elena, you're part of the case." Elena looked down at her shaking hands. For years they had called her weak, broken, defective. But now, standing in the center of 240 silent witnesses, she realized something terrifyingly powerful. Her existence had just dismantled an empire. And this time they couldn't take it back. The courtroom, like silence that followed Arthur Hale's final announcement, felt heavier than anything Elena had ever experienced. Even after the chaos of the revelations, even after the truth about her birth and her stolen identity, something about the finality of it all still hadn't fully settled. Richard Carter stood motionless near the stage, his once impeccable posture now fractured. Celeste sobbed uncontrollably beside him, while Vanessa remained frozen, staring at Elena as if seeing a stranger for the first time. But Elena wasn't looking at them anymore. She was still holding Marian's hand, warm, real, steady. For the first time in her life, she wasn't bracing herself for rejection. Arthur closed his briefcase with a soft click, that echoed through the ballroom like a gavel. Law enforcement will proceed with formal detainment and questioning, he said calmly. Multiple charges are already being processed, including identity fraud, child abduction, medical falsification, and financial misconduct. At that exact moment, uniformed officers finally entered the ballroom, not rushing, not hesitating, just confirming what everyone already knew. Richard's voice broke as he turned toward them. This is a mistake. You don't understand who I am. An officer stepped forward. Mr. Carter, you have the right to remain silent. The words that once only belonged to powerful people now belong to him. Metal cuffs clicked and the sound echoed louder than the chandeliers above. Elena watched without blinking. No satisfaction, no joy, no dramatic relief, just stillness. Because revenge, she realized, wasn't loud. It was quiet truth finally being heard. Vanessa suddenly rushed forward a few steps. Elena, please don't let them take him like this. He's still our father. Elena turned slowly toward her. For a moment, she said nothing. Then softly, he stopped being my father the moment he called me defective in front of everyone. Vanessa flinched like she'd been struck. I didn't know, Vanessa whispered. I swear I didn't know they lied about everything. I thought you were sick. You thought what they told you to think. Elena interrupted gently, not cruelly, just truthfully. That silence hurt Vanessa more than anger would have. Marian stepped slightly closer to Elena, her voice careful. You don't have to carry any of them anymore. Not their lies, not their guilt. Elena exhaled shakily. But before she could respond, Arthur approached once more. There is one final legal confirmation, he said. Richard, now being escorted away, stopped briefly at the edge of the room. Everyone waited. Arthur looked at Elena. Due to the fraudulent use of your identity in corporate holdings and asset structuring, Miss Elena Carter is recognized as a partial legal stakeholder in the Carter family estate until proceedings are finalized. A ripple of shock moved through the crowd. Daniel blinked. That means, Elena whispered, I'm tied to them, legally. Arthur nodded. Yes, you will have full rights in court proceedings regarding the division of assets. Richard suddenly laughed bitterly from the officer's grip. Even after everything you still take from me. Elena finally looked at him directly, and this time she didn't see power. She saw consequences. You took my entire life, she said quietly. I'm just taking back the truth. That was when Richard stopped laughing. Because he understood something fundamental. She wasn't chasing revenge. She was simply no longer someone he could erase. The officers led him out. Celeste followed in tears. Vanessa stood frozen alone in the center of the ruined ballroom. And slowly, guests began leaving, not in whispers anymore, but in silence. No one wanted to be part of what had just collapsed in front of them. One by one, the Carter name was leaving the room, until only Elena remained at the center. Marian gently squeezed her hand. Come with me, she whispered. You don't have to stay here another second. Elena hesitated. The ballroom still felt like a ghost of her past life. Every corner held a memory she never chose. Every echo carried a version of her that was always told she was not enough. But now she wasn't that version anymore. She looked at Marian, then at Daniel, who gave her a small, steady nod. And finally, she looked once at the empty stage where her father had stood just hours ago, calling her defective in front of 240 guests. 60 seconds later, everything had begun to fall apart. But now, as she stepped away from that place, Elena understood something deeper. Those 60 seconds didn't destroy her. They revealed her. And for the first time in her life, Elena Carter walked out of a room not as someone broken, but as someone finally whole.